Hello and welcome to this very, very special episode of the Successful Mentalist podcast. My name is Aidan O'Sullivan and I'm joined by my very good friend and co-host, Mr. Ashley Green.
Hello, you lovely people in the podcast world listening to a mentalism podcast. Is that right?
No, that was awful, but we'll leave it in. Which is great. No, today we've got a really, really special guest on board. We're loving these conversations right now. We've had some incredible conversations with some of the greatest names in magic and non-magic as well. But today we have perhaps one of my favorite minds in magic. Christian Grace is not only a great friend, but he's a fantastic thinker and creator of magic. You might recognize him from many of his releases, including both Pluck and LevelOne on Vanishing Inc. If you haven't seen these, like a quick little story, it was a couple of years ago. We was on our way to Blackpool on the train. We met up on the train, Ashley, and we was there with Christian. And Christian proceeded to blow my mind with LevelOne, which was the cleanest vanishing deck that I've ever seen on the planet. Absolutely fooled the heck out of me. And I've just been obsessed with that man and his way of thinking and his attitude and his character and his persona ever since. So to the point that we had to just get him on the podcast. Simple as that. We're actually talking a lot about creativity and all of these other little nuggets throughout the way. But I genuinely, I've been excited for this conversation for so long.
What I particularly like, and you guys will hear me say it over and over and over again in this podcast, but just how authentic and kind and caring, how much of a beautiful soul he is, and how he was just so open in sharing natural and organic thoughts. Like, Christian isn't one of those people that just tries to beef stuff up and make it look better than what it is. It's like just so down to earth, so human, and that is what I resonate with so much within this particular episode. Like, it's really, really great. But as always, guys, before we crack on with the meat of the content, if you are new to listening to the Successful Mentalist podcast, do consider whacking the subscribe button, because we launch an episode every single Sunday. We've got a variety of past content, so do check that out, including some awesome episodes with some amazing celebrity guests. But without all of those shameless plugs in the way, I think we should crack on and actually jump straight into the meat of the content with none other than the fantastic Christian Grace. Honestly, I'm so glad we have you here today, Christian, on the podcast. What you have done in magic is like incredible. Some of your releases are just insane. And can I also point out that so many people know you from various releases, from various insane projects, like the super imaginative and creative visions you have, and you're able to bring these things to life, and they are just incredible. You're not putting out rubbish like a lot of magicians out there. Every single thing you put out is gold after gold after gold after gold. But one of the most amazing traits that I love about you are so kind and caring, which is often lost in the magic industry. And I'm not just saying that to warm you up just because you're here, but genuinely. So guys, this is an absolutely incredible episode with our fantastic friend Christian. So Christian, why don't you say hello?
Hello everyone. Oh my god, Ashley, what an introduction. I don't even know how to respond to that. That's so generous of you to say those wonderful things. It's a pleasure to be here with both of you, and thank you for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, well, thanks for being here. You know, when we was putting together our podcast, we actually asked you a few months back to get on it, because when we were setting up these special guest episodes, we knew that you had so much value to actually give to our audience at the time. So we're actually so glad we've managed to nail you down and just kind of like pin you in for this interview, because I know you're so busy with all the various different things you're doing. So thank you so much for actually being here. But Aidan, without further ado, what should we talk to Christian about today?
This is a really interesting question. I think I think let's roll on the subject of creativity. Let's start with there, because you have one of the most creative minds I've ever met. Genuinely, the way you think about things is not only brilliant, but it's very, very different as well. So I'm really curious, do you have a creative process to start with, like a framework or anything that you use, or do you just wing it and hope for the best?
That is one way of doing it. Wow, creativity. So this is such a multifaceted subject. So there are various answers to it. So let's sort of think about how I approach things. I think the most important thing to begin with as a foundation is to have a clear goal in mind. You know, what do you actually want from magic? What do you want your magic to look like? And these things can be as little as, boiling it down to a move. How do you want this move to look? Or better still, how do you want it not to look? How do I make this thing invisible? If it's a prop or a gimmick, it's how does it function? How do I want it to function? So for me personally, it's about the effect. I want a really strong effect, and I want to find the most simplest and practical methods to get to that. My general approach is simply action versus inaction. So actually putting your ideas into practice, manifesting your thoughts in the real world by simply working on something and trying it, because that's the only way you're going to know whether something should live or die. You'll have loads of ideas and only some of them will be good, and the only way to understand that is to actually build the thing you want to build or work on the thing you want to work on. So it's action versus inaction. If you are looking at gimmick making, which is something that I love to do, it's not always the case that you're going to have the skills to make the gimmicks that you want to make. So I would advise people, if you've got an idea, get together people that can make things for you. By prototyping things, it gives you a really good indication on what problems you fall present themselves to you, and then how to solve those problems. Which actually brings me on to the last main point of how I think or approach creativity, which is problem solving. It boils down to, does this feel right? Can I make this better? Always understanding that it's an open-ended thing and that you'll never just find a solution. Like a solution won't just always be a final solution. Opinions change, time changes, sorry. And with that comes, new ideas on the same idea that you're working on. So it's always to be open-minded, to always think to improve what you're working on at the time. I mean, there's a lot there that I just rambled out with, but it is something I do truly believe in. Like, you've got to understand what you want from magic first and foremost, and then just get on with it. Nike got it right when they said just do it.
So true. I'm really interested because creativity is really, really interesting in the sense of a lot of people get confused about it. So perhaps, but like I've got another bit that I want to pick up your thoughts on. But
sure,
if you was to put a definition to creativity, what would you describe creativity as?
Imagination. Can you pull up Google and type in, and I just type in creativity definition. It'll have something broadly speaking on originality, and read it out for us, because this is a good point, good place to start.
The use of imagination or original ideas to create something.
There we are. So I mean, yeah, I can't do a better definition than that. that is what creativity is. It's exercising that muscle, and everything starts with a thought. And thoughts manifest because you ask questions. Like I said before, it's about problem solving. If you're using a prop and something doesn't feel right, and you think you've got to think to yourself, well, how can I solve this problem? And then you might have an idea or a solution, and then you have to try that idea to know whether it works or doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, is there another solution? And by doing those things, the actual action will present questions that you never thought to ask in the first place. So yeah, creativity by definition, for Oxford dictionary definition, does a better job than I would ever do. But yeah, so I hope that was not a cop-out answer.
I mean, I'll be honest, just Google it is probably the simplest answer to that question.
Yeah, it is. But it's I do believe that is the best way to look at it. It's not something unachievable. It's not also something that comes to you by creating. Sorry, how best to say this? The act of creating gives the definition of creativity. It's not like you just sit there saying, oh, I want to be a creator because I'd like to create magic. You actually create magic to be a creator. You have to do it. It's no use thinking about what creation. It's just start exploring, use your imagination, understand what you want to achieve, and start working at it. And there's no better solution than that. And I know that sounds simple and hopefully not like something Tony Robbins would say, or, you know, it's not a cop-out thing. It really is as literal as that, you know, in my case anyway. This is how I see things.
Well, no, I mean, you're completely true. I think because I've spent far too long that I'm prepared to admit actually studying creativity on a psychological, neurobiological level, what actually is creativity. And a lot of it actually genuinely comes down to what you're saying of, well, it's a lot of the time, I think from an early age, people are believed to either be a creative or not creative. And it is binary. It's like, oh, I'm a little bit creative. That's kind of the cop out when people don't really know what they're talking about, I think. Like from a really early age, if you want to look at it from like the world of education, when you're choosing your subjects, I give this example a lot because when you're choosing subjects, a lot of people can either go and do things like performing arts, either the dramas, the music, the other more naturally creative subjects, or they can jump to something that might be seen as less creative, like a maths or a science-based thing, which I'll be honest, equally as creative, if not more creative, but it's seen as these are the creative subjects, these are not creative. And then there's this divide that comes in that everyone believes themselves to actually be creative, not creative. But what you're saying here is that creativity actually comes from action. It actually comes from the process of exercising ideas and imagination.
Yeah, exactly. And also I'd like to add that I always encourage people to find their own solutions to problems that they find themselves, depending on what they want to do or what they see as their goal in magic. First and foremost, I think it's better to try and look for those answers before reaching for a book to find, you know, the answer somewhere else, because you might then find an original way of doing something that hasn't been conceived or preconceived. Of course, knowledge is key, right? To know is the goal. So looking at books and deepening your understanding of theory and method is essential, but that will come naturally over time anyway. So best thing to do is to look at an effect that you want to perform, understand how you want it to look in performance, and then work towards, you know, creating the most efficient way of getting to that point. Use all the materials you have around you and sit there and don't stop till you find an answer.
That's really interesting. I was talking to Timon Kraus ages ago, and he said something that really just shook me on the subject of going to your books and things. He said that the books are not there for inspiration, and a lot of people think, oh, I want to create something, I want to do a new trend, just open the book. No, what we go to the books for information, not inspiration.
There you go.
What I'm saying here is that actually, rather than just here's an idea, let me see if I know let me see if there's a method in Tarbell that'll allow me to, or let me just see if 13 Steps has got a version of doing this. It's what we're actually doing is we're thinking first, think first, research second.
I think so. I would just always encourage that, you know. There's a product that I have coming out with Vanishing Inc. I can't say when because of the pandemic and how that shifted things, but it's loosely, I can explain, it's based around a switch, a billet switch. So I took it upon myself to understand the goal first, which was that I wanted what I could see, what the information that was available was that most switches are switches that are covered, you know, where the billet goes out of sight. So I wanted to find a solution where the billet could stay in sight, you know, so that was my goal. And instead of researching everything that's out there, I tried to find my own solutions, and I happened to have managed to do that. And then, of course, afterwards, it's good to cross-reference and make sure you're not stepping on anyone else's toes with method, or paying credit where it's due is important as well. But that's a good example of everything I've mentioned in the beginning of having a goal in mind and then finding your own way to make it work. You know
what's really fascinating is seeing and unwinding your approach to this. But you have said something which I've touched on, Christian, and it's problems and finding solutions. And a lot of
Mm.
people listening to this podcast now are going to be thinking, oh, that's good. You seem to be getting all these ideas. You seem to be coming up with this, and you're naturally like overcoming these problems that are getting past. But I think a really eye-opening question for kind of the viewers here the listeners here are, would be, do you ever get stuck? And by stuck, I don't mean for 5 minutes, an hour. Like, do you get really stuck where you're sat there for days and weeks thinking, gosh, what do I do next?
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing, isn't it? Is not being happy or content with what you're doing. I mean, that's the whole reason. That's the force that pushes you to continue to work on something. I mean, being stuck on something is hard to define, because I mean, every problem's different, even if it's a small or a big one. I think it's just, yes, inevitably in my case, I get stuck on an idea and I find it hard to grasp a solution. I think on a practical level, it's good to have people around you that share the same visions that you have towards magic, and to be able to voice an idea that you're hitting a wall with them, and understand from a different perspective if there are things that you're missing that based on your experience you're not familiar with. That can always be a good catalyst in starting that process, or at least overcoming those problems. Yeah, but a short answer to that is yes. I'm all, there's hundreds of ideas in the notebook that, you know, I'm not satisfied with. You know, even if others say, oh, that's fantastic, you should release that, I'm still like, no, it's not ready, because it's not pure enough. It's not, you know, there's always going to be that thing. Take LevelOne, for example. I'm extremely proud of it, but since release, I still think about it, and I've still been developing it conceptually and understanding where that principle can be applied to other things, you know. So yeah.
So you touched on something as well. You've mentioned it a few times in terms of you've got this notebook of ideas that to others might seem like a good conceptualized finished idea, but it's still something that you're not happy with. Like how do you like keep track of all of your ideas? Do you write everything down, or just the highlights, or how do you actually note take your thoughts on a process?
Yeah, so I say notebook. I do have several like books that I use, but I more often than not, if I'm walking out and about, I just have my notes app on my phone, and inspiration can come from anywhere. It doesn't even, you might not even be thinking about creating magic, but you'll see something and you'll think, my God, that's a good premise, or my goodness, that particular function of that prop or something you come across might just inspire an idea for an effect. So yes, I think it's good to write everything down. What you actually end up working on will be down to your how excited you are about the ideas that you have in that notebook, but or just where your attention is that particular day. I'm constantly flitting between things. I think it's a good exercise as well. It's worth mentioning. It's quite healthy and balanced to juggle different things at the same time. You might feel like you're hitting a wall if you're just working on one problem. You know, it's good to put that aside and then look at something else and then come back to that with fresh eyes and stuff. So that's how I do it anyway. You know, I won't wake up in the morning and say, today I'm going to work on this. I'll naturally be thinking about something that's bothering me, and so I'll give that the attention. But yeah, so I encourage everyone to write down their ideas, even if they're not ideas for magic. If it's just something you like, your interests, you know, it's always good to start with what you care about and what you're interested in, and then let that translate through to magic and how you perform and the rest of it.
Yeah, 2 points there, which is so useful, writing it down. I see so many magicians and they always say, I'm not creative, I can't do this, I'm not creative, I can't come up with tricks. And then you actually speak to them and say, well, I did have this idea, I did have this idea, I did have this idea, but they weren't good enough. But at the end of the day,
That's the
they've
point.
forgotten most of it. Exactly. They've got that first basis. You write it down, then you can develop it later. And what you have said there about taking time to switch off, this is what me and Aidan talk about all the time.
Oh, good.
That ability to switch off, because sometimes you've worked on it. And what there was a saying, Aidan, something like, if you can't solve it in an hour, you're not going to solve it in the next few, or something like that. You told me. I've completely butchered what Aidan was saying there in a point, but
I'll be honest, I don't recognize the quote, but I get what you mean.
yeah,
Yeah.
because sometimes you can put yourself through that mental exhaustion, and we do something known as Einstein's combinatory play, and more recently it's known as the MacGyver effect, which is where we're working on something, whether it's in our business, an effect, something in our show, or something anywhere else. We will go, you know what, we're done. Let's put that. I'm not going to think about it. I'm just going to go off on a walk. But your brain still works on it in the background, doesn't it? And then eventually, you've probably been in those moments, haven't you, Christian, where you're midway in the shower or the loo or midway through a walk, and you go, "Oh my gosh, that is the moment! Yes, that is it." But that's because your brain is always working. So you touched on something beautiful, which is having that ability to switch off. Do you have any systems in place to make sure that you actually do that, or is it quite simply just whenever it feels like, you know what, I need to put that to one side?
Yeah, no, that's cool. I definitely understand even what you've said about that shower moment. Like having a shower is a good place to have ideas for some reason. That's a really good spot. I recommend everyone gets in the shower. No, so I think a good thing for me personally, juggling, swimming, these are activities that you have to be present to actually swim, right? So your mind it gives your mind a bit of a rest, because you have to focus on the action and the monotony of the action, so it's a bit like meditation. So for me, at the moment it's unfortunate because the pandemic, my gym's closed, but when that opens up again, I'm there every day. I swim every day, and it does help just take my mind off things for a while. Practically that's what I do. I've started jogging. I guess that helps as well. Just put a podcast or a bit of music on and just get on with something to occupy your body. And
Right, I just want to paint a bit of the science behind what's going on in this bit of
please tell me
really
why am I doing the things I'm doing?
Why do I think of a card trick when I'm washing my face?
I know. Oh.
Well, so in these cases where we're actually taking our mind completely off of things, it's a really, really fundamental part of the creative process. Way back when there was a 4-stage model of creativity that was put out there, it's been kind of slammed and investigated a little bit, because it's saying that creativity is all very 4-stage, like it's not as linear and as simple as do this, then this, then this, and then you've got a perfect idea. But there is a part, and a really important part is what Ashley referenced there, in that actually stepping away in that, not MacGyver effect, but the combinatory play, just letting your brain do the work. Because when you distract yourself and you're doing something like swimming, for example, you go for a walk or you go for a swim, you're present in that moment. And what that actually does is, it's because you're present in the moment, in your prefrontal cortex, getting all technical, which is basically the big front bit of the brain, the activity in that area of your brain actually quietens down a little bit. That's where the sense of self all comes in, and basically you get outside of your own head and you go into what's known as like a flow state some of the time, a micro flow, and that's just essentially allowing your brain to go onto overdrive, etc., etc. And those kind of experiences allow creativity to boost. The neural pathways that are involved with creativity, they go up, sometimes even as much as 500%, according to some studies. And that's quite simply because you're staying away and you're putting your mind elsewhere, allowing your mind to actually do the work, and your subconscious to do the work whilst you're not paying attention to it.
That's brilliant. Yeah, no, I didn't know the reasons why, but that does sound, plausible.
I'm glad it sounds plausible.
No, it is. It's interesting to see it explained that way, but that's very much it. I find, I mentioned juggling is a good example. You're constantly trying to throw and catch balls, so you have no opportunity to think around that. That's why I likened it to meditation.
There was actually something I was going to touch on, because we had a fascinating conversation with DMC a little while back, and one of the things I noticed from having a chat with him is so much of really what he said, it all boiled down to one thing, which he explained: being present in the moment, just being present in the here and now, not worrying about the future, not worrying about the past, not overthinking all these very different things and getting distracted. Just what's happening here and now. And that's exactly what you've touched on. And I was going to ask you the question: do you have any meditation techniques or spiritual techniques or just grounding techniques to help with this and guide you through? And you've already touched loosely, you do.
Yeah, so I mean, if that's I guess what I've described is what it's called. Meditation is the outcome of centering yourself. And I think when it comes to working or practicing magic, that in and of itself is a meditation in a way. You know, it gets to that point where you're in an idea so much that you just, that's all you're seeing, and it's a very clear way of looking at things if you can get into a good rhythm of it. Do I have any practices? I think it's good just to try and keep healthy and keep positive. And I know it's not an easy time to do that for a lot of people. You know, I myself have struggled at times, but it really does have a knock-on effect to everything else in your life. If you're not in that positive mindset. So yeah, it's important to approach things with a positive mind, you know.
Well, I'm really curious because again, we're like both myself and Ashley, we were literally talking just this morning about the importance of a growth mindset and actually having that opportunity to have that positive, open-minded attitude of constant learning and picking new things and genuinely like, I know that you've got that yourself, which every creative seems to have this. It seems to be a natural skill. If you're struggling with that creative process, chances are if you can start exploring the idea of a growth mindset, then you can actually naturally pick up on more of these things. But I'm really curious, because obviously you're saying that you're jumping backwards and forwards between ideas as and when, but how do you determine whether an idea is a good idea to think about or put attention to?
So first and foremost, in my case, it's just about the effect itself, you know. So I just want the most magical thing, you know. If it's a prediction, I want the prediction to be on the table. You ask them what to name something, they open it up and it matches, you know. And how do we make that as clear, as innocent, as natural, as pure, as impromptu, or whatever you want it to be? How do we achieve that?
You know, you've struck me with something. You struck me with something, Christian, and you've mentioned it twice in this interview now. You say when you're going through, you want to achieve this big thing and you want to make something the most magical moment. And at the beginning, you've touched on something and saying you want everything you create to be strong magic. But I hear this a lot, and I see this a lot in the magic community. Everyone says, yeah, I want to perform strong magic. I want to perform really, really good magic. But what the hell is strong magic? Like at the core of what it is, what is it? Because
gosh, that's such a deep question to ask. I mean, in a way, you're demonstrating a knowledge that you have that other people haven't yet experienced or tapped into. So the intrigue is there. I'm less of a fan of sort of adopting the role of someone who claims I can do this, I can fly, I can, you know what I mean? I'm less interested in that. I'm more interested in just creating an impossible moment, you know, something that they understand based on all their knowledge can't exist, and yet it does. I think that's kind of translates directly to a feeling that your participant has, and therefore that is magic. I think it's a feeling that you're trying to create at the end of the day. Of course, as you guys know, I'm a card magician predominantly. I love card magic. I can't stop thinking about it. It's where my head's at all the time. And if you were a magician in the true sense, would you even touch a deck of cards? Probably not, you know. you'd be helping people, and you'd be using your magic for much larger issues, I'm sure. So let's not kid ourselves, right? What we're doing is trickery. We're demonstrating magic using the props that we love. And if you don't take yourself too seriously, that can translate very well, and it can feel like a genuine moment of magic. And I put that in, you know, these the podcast people can't see, I'm just putting my finger, what are these called?
I'll be honest,
inverted commas, is that?
Yeah, oh god,
magic. Yeah, but I hopefully you understand what I mean. So strong magic in the context at which I perform would be, you know, someone thinks of a card and it disappears from their hands and appears somewhere that they choose in the room, or something, you know, something undeniably impossible, and yet knowingly it's a demonstration of a trick. They understand that there's a working to it. They feel the mystery because they can't comprehend what's actually, you know, facilitating that moment. So yeah, I think although this is a side point, I do often like magic to be to feel inclusive, impromptu, and to feel you know, genuine and down to earth. You know, you're not trying to convince anyone of anything. You're just demonstrating something and letting them, you know, letting them come to the conclusion as to what's happened. You know, I mean, I should mention Darren at this point. He's a master of that. You know, I mean, he's the best performer, in my opinion, that's ever lived. I can't see. He's the best example of a magician in that sense, you know.
You know, it's something else that you do when you're performing, and it's probably one of the main reasons that I absolutely adore watching you perform.
Oh, thanks, Aidan.
There's so many reasons, but
you're too sweet.
If I was to pick it up, it's like it goes down to exactly what you're saying here in terms of you're just trying to share something that is undeniably impossible, but you get excited about that.
Oh yeah,
like you get really excited about that. Like, you know, it's just a trick, and you're not afraid to let people know that it's.
I'm not trying to convince anything more than that, right? You're just, you know, it's like if you play the piano, it's just like playing a song for someone sincerely. You know, removing all the pretentiousness, or, you know, trying to take away the ego and you know, it's a battle because we all have an ego, right? But it's not using that as the focal point. It's looking at what you're demonstrating and making that the best it can be. And of course I'm excited about it because it's my love, it's my passion, and I want that to translate to my audience. So you know, I mean, that's just a natural thing that I've come to, you know, be basically is just based around the fact that I love what I'm doing and I want to share that with someone. I want them to love it too, you know, and the best way to do that is to be excited about it and to encourage and convince them that it's worth their attention, you know.
So in that sense, can anything be strong magic if you've got that as a basis?
Yeah, but well, if you make someone think or focus on something long or hard enough, they will see the magic in it. I mean, everything around us is magic. Like, it can be seen that way, right? You can explain it. You can try and be literal and say, well, this is a built up of atoms, and you know, you can get into all of that, or you can just see it as, you know, wonder all around, constantly, right? Maybe some people won't understand me when I say that because it will sound too sort of airy fairy, but you know, I mean, life is magic. This is very magical, what we're in right now.
I love that. I particularly love the fact that you've got this opportunity for people to see magic in different ways. And I guess the real question then is, if magic is truly so subjective, so subjective in the sense that you can go incredibly literal about magic, or stay lighter, airy fairy, as you said, how on earth can we help other people do better magic if it's so subjective? How do you think we can actually teach magic?
Yeah, it's the term better magic. That's a term that everyone should define for themselves anyway, you know. So it's not, it can't be about one person offering the solution or the absolute truth. It's about finding what is true to you. So yeah, that's a really difficult one, Aidan. How can we help better? I think just stick to your guns about what you see magic is, and try and communicate that as best as you can through your performance or through your teaching, be it what you choose to do.
That totally resonates. Yeah, I think that's really important. It's one of those cases that it's very much, if you believe in it strongly enough to actually do it and have that passion behind it and that energy and that drive behind it, well, if you're going to share that with other people and either teach magicians or just share it with other people, then it really comes down to just sticking with what you believe in and let other people join up and join and support you where they see relevant, rather than trying to appeal to everybody. I think that's another, and I suppose that's another really important question. Actually, let's look at it from an audience perspective, trying to appeal to everybody. Should we try and make our magic appealing to everybody? What are your thoughts on
that? Well, that's up to them to decide. I think no, I think, you know, naturally people have different interests, and we shouldn't crowbar our magic into every situation. We try and, it's all about communication at the end of the day. If someone's really highly interested in something and you want to captivate that person, it's good to enter from that perspective and share that with them. I think I don't know how to expand more on that.
Like, I completely agree with everything that you've just said there. Like, I genuinely think that it's one of those cases of like, if somebody doesn't like our magic or doesn't enjoy or appreciate our magic in any way, just move on.
Yeah.
And we get hooked on that. And I think it's probably from like my hypothesis, it comes from ego.
Yeah, well, we can only do, we can only demonstrate what we do. It's up to them to enjoy it or not. And there are ways, obviously, of learning how to communicate better with, people who are less interested in magic. So there are ways to navigate.
At this point, Christian, we've spoken and gone quite deep on magic in terms of like what strong magic is, what is the essence of creativity, like what's your process, and we've been trying to pick your brains and really understand that from your side. And for me, it's always fascinating, it's always interesting, and I love your insights. You're one of those people which just shares what's on their mind, and there's something so beautiful and so natural, so organic, and I really know it's resonating with a lot of people listening here. However, Aidan, don't hate me for this, but I'm going to do something crazy. I'm going to do something we've never done before.
Goodness.
Those were the rude minds listening to the podcast. It's not that. But Aidan, I want to take this round and cover something we never really speak about on the TSM podcast. Tricks, effects, and specifically methods. Like, you've spoken about methods, Christian, in terms of the other angle. Like you touched on it, like, oh yeah, this is what you go to the books to find these methods to put them into tricks. But a lot of people going through creativity, they might understand it now from hearing past things that me and Aidan put out, the advice that you've shared, and they're thinking, okay, I understand creativity, I understand all about that. Christian's a view on magic in general and what strong magic is, what the essence of magic is really interesting. But how do I go about finding the right method? How do I know what methods suit a situation? Are certain methods good? Are certain methods bad? Should there be some methods which I shouldn't use for me? Should there be some methods which I should? Like, once they're at this process, how do they piece it in?
Well, yeah, my goodness, Ashley, what a massive introduction and question to that. Okay, so there are countless methods available, and accessing those methods is through experience, through, obviously, like we discussed, Timon said, the books have the information. So reading is going to help you expand your knowledge on method. Other magicians is a great place to start as well, because they will know of methods or reference books that you haven't touched or read. and that could be helpful. When you ask the question, is there a right method? What should or shouldn't I be using? Again, it boils down to what you want the effect to be and whether it is practical for you. You'll hear a lot of people saying things like, oh, I don't use this because it's not practical. I have to wear a jacket. And all of this is unacceptable in my view. The effect comes first, right? And if that requires a hell of a lot of preparation and setup, you put the legwork in and you will get that coming out the other end, and it will be better. Look at Dynamo, for example, without touching upon method, like I'm pretty certain him walking on the River Thames had a little bit more than just, there was a lot of preparation that potentially went into that to make it as magical as it is, but that will stand the test of time. People are still talking about that. People will not stop talking about it. It's become legend, so with regards to putting in the legwork to make things work and to sourcing methods and to never stop looking for improvement, of course that's key to making your magic the strongest it can be.
This goes back to what you said about strong magic and your need and your inner need for everything you create to be strong magic. Like the method is irrelevant. It's the payoff, it's the audience's experience, and you're going to do everything behind the scenes to make it all worthwhile.
Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. And again, and I'll say it, the effect for me personally, okay, this doesn't mean it has to apply to everyone. The effect is the most important thing. And I will be quite brutal with it. I will strip out things that don't land consistently with what is natural. Like, for example, even an Elmsley count. This is just an example, but I was talking to my friend Andrew the other day about the use of an Elmsley count. Who sits there and counts cards in that way. Yes, if you want to demonstrate they're all face down, you'd casually hand them from hand to hand. But the way that it's been read as an Elmsley count serves this purpose, and the way it's enacted or even used as the instigator to create an effect is not necessarily the right way around. So you've got the twisting the aces thing where one ace turns over, then another one, and then another one. I mean, what is that? Like, yes, okay, it's puzzling how, that an ace turns face down and one turns face up. But I mean, is that the type of, is that the effect you want? And if it is, and that's okay if it is, why? Why do you want to demonstrate that? What is it you're trying to tell your audience? Do you want them to think that you're exceptionally clever or fast with your hands? Or do you know what I mean? It's like, you've got to look at what you're doing, and in that sense, I would then take the Elmsley count out, of the effect if it's not serving the end goal, if it's not a method, So based on what you said about choosing the right or wrong methods, I will, I'll look at what that particular method achieves and how it's presented or how it functions or whatever it is, and I'll ask myself truthfully, is this congruent with natural behavior? Is this serving the effect, or is it just, am I just diminishing the effect by crowbarring this particular method into the process? And if you don't have the solution and if you don't have the method, there's your starting point. I've got the effect in mind. How can I get there? That chair, I want to make it disappear. How can I make that chair disappear? Okay, well, there's several problems here. Okay, it's a big object, how can I mean, look, this is a terrible example, but it's like, that would be magical, right? If you said to someone, look at this chair, and it just disappeared, and then you think to yourself, well, what would happen after the chair disappears? That person would then go, where did it go? And so they'd start looking for it. They wouldn't just stand back and appreciate the space. They'd walk into it. Oh, hang on a minute, they can't walk into the space if I've used a trapdoor, and now I've got another problem. Like, how do I cover up that trapdoor? How do I stop that person from moving towards the space? What do I say, or how do I focus the attention somewhere else immediately afterwards to then cover up what I need to, you know, it's about thinking about creating the most magical thing and working all the little cogs that need to be turned to achieve that effect. I think obviously we mentioned before, LevelOne was my first product to market, hopefully not my last. I mean, I've got a few things in the pipeline that are coming out, and I'm really looking forward to sharing them with the community. But LevelOne's a good example of looking at an effect and saying, you know, I want an object to disappear, sleeves rolled up, you know, that's one door we're closing because people think, you know, things got magician sleeves. So let's get that sleeve rolled up, hand stretched out. There's an object in my hand. How do I make that vanish? You know, better still, how can I make it vanish slowly in their perception, you know, bit by bit? You know, and so finding that solution is a good example of reducing it to its simplest form. Like, you, without giving away the method, you guys would agree that the gimmick itself is very simple in its workings. It's not convoluted. There's no additional unnecessary things.
Let's put it like this. When you gave me the gimmick on the train to Blackpool, the first time we met, you fried me several times over. You handed me the gimmick, and it was just nuts how simple it was, and my brain didn't compute. It didn't get it. It didn't see the pieces. It didn't see the method to the actual effect, and I think that's in and of itself a good aim to strive for, like being able to have an indistinguishable method.
It's literally just, I'm only giving that example. I don't just want to be known for LevelOne. I'm only giving that example because people might be more familiar with it than the other stuff that hasn't yet hit the market. And I do think it is a good example to try and explain what I mean about finding a simple, practical, effective solution, and also still retaining that visual and conceptual, like, strong magic moment, you know, really ticking those boxes, you know.
So what you're saying here is it's really important when anyone's creating or developing something that they don't let the method compromise what it is that they're trying to achieve, in short.
And the method, more often than not, will be a compromise. You know, it will be ineffective, or, you know, there are always going to be compromises here and there, because we can't actually make said chair disappear. You know, we haven't found that way yet. You know, doesn't mean we can't stop searching. So yeah. You are, what was the question, Ashley?
I was saying, in short, basically, you're not letting the method compromise the overall effect, what it is that you're trying to achieve, that big picture.
Yeah, exactly. No, the effect is the most important thing, and there will be methods that work better than others, and there'll be methods that you want to brutally kick off the platform, you know.
So this is just out of personal curiosity then. We get the question, and when I was starting out in magic, I had it everywhere. I was hearing about it, but like this too perfect rule, or you shouldn't do magic that's absolutely magical and absolutely utterly fantastic and really truly mind-blowing, because it's too perfect and then it's unreasonable.
Right.
Should we should we just ignore that?
Well, okay, so that's also really interesting. Like, let's say you did like 5 tricks in a row and one of them was more perfect than the others. You know, that would be a problem, because you're undermining the perfection of that one miracle with other things that demonstrate actually that miracle might just be another, you know, cleverer way of doing the other thing. So by simply just doing that miracle and just performing that one thing, I believe that rule doesn't apply, you know, because now you're someone who's come into, you've come into a situation, you've demonstrated something, and then you've left it and let it sit. And now it's open-ended. And so the too perfect theory, I take that with a pinch of salt. You know, I think it's undisputable if you were to do something really, truly impossible, and then leave it open-ended for them to not understand whether they're, I mean, that's the whole thing, right?
So we just took a quick break, but in that break, we had a quick chat about something. And it really struck me because, and like we paused our conversation to come back and actually have the conversation now, but we was talking about the torn and restored card as just like an example to illustrate a point. And the point was really just boiling things back to their essence. And you was talking about conventional ways of or the modern or the typical way of doing a torn and restored card. Could you just sort of run us by that?
Yeah, no. So I was just simply, one of my favorite magicians is Guy Hollingworth. He's a phenomenal thinker and creator, performer. He's got the whole package basically. And within the realm of torn and restore car, he innovated it, the workings of it. But he set this example, like ripping it into 4 pieces and restoring it piece by piece. And of course, that's unbelievably, undeniably magical to have a sign card, to rip it up and to restore it bit by bit. But when we're talking about the simplest form, it would literally be, 2 pieces. You'd rip it once, show the 2 pieces, and put them back together again. And that in its essence, in its simplest form is the essence of tearing something and restoring it. So it's just by simply stripping it back to the form in which you can demonstrate it in its simplest form, you then can start exploring new ways to achieve the same effect. Not necessarily looking what's existed in the past and having to adhere to that as a rule, and just simply looking at it in a different way. Okay, so that's the kind of thing we touched on in the break. And it's not a big point, but it's certainly something to consider, just thinking, generally speaking, how can this thing that I'm doing be simpler? Can I demonstrate this in a way that's, more easy to understand? And if so, let's start exploring it, because, that's where it can all kick off.
Well, this striving for simplicity is really, really important. We actually did an episode of the podcast quite a while back now, actually on simplicity, and it, much to myself and Ashley's shock and surprise, it's one of our highest performing episodes, episode 22. And nice. It's really interesting to actually see like the fact that simplicity is so like important, and it kind of boils things back to the purity in that level. And it means that we can really go and demonstrate good magic, because we're not trying to do good magic in like a really flashy, and for the listeners, you can't see I'm wafting my arms around and I'm going to keep doing it because it feels weird now, but it's like we're trying to make the magic stand out and be really, really amazing in a million and one ways, where actually what we can do to make it even more impressive is play on the simplicity, strip it back to the essence, and just do it. Yeah, that's it. Just do it. I told you Nike had it right when they said just do it. There's a friend of mine, his name's Brad. I won't say his full name because I don't think he doesn't even want to be known. I just don't get it. He's one of the best magicians in the whole world that I've ever met. And he just doesn't like to be talked about. But what did he say? Yeah, his main philosophy is just do the trick, mate. It's just like, I wonder if I could do this. I wonder, just do the trick. But yeah, just do it. What a great rule to live by. I think it's the most important rule to live by. Like yes. In magic and out, it's a game changer. And one of the things that myself and Ashley, like we in our like business and magic and like everywhere, it's kind of an ethos that we live by, is quite simply working faster, not harder. So a lot of it comes down to just do it. Will an audience like this double lift trick? Just do it. And will an audience like this torn and restore? Just do it. It's profound.
Again, that's where you see where things work or don't work, or where you understand what you like or what you don't like. It's in doing it. There's no other way to know. There's no other way to know than to learn from the mistakes of putting it into action.
Learning from mistakes, doing all this, and you learn what you like as well through doing the things that you don't like. And like we said, to really, and sorry, Aidan's going to hate me again, to move back to methods and moves, it goes back to the moves you don't like and what you don't like as well. It comes from just doing it, getting out there, and just, not being afraid.
But also, why Ask yourself, why don't you like that move? You know, was it because the pacing was a specific speed, and then suddenly you speed up or slow down at the one point which signals what that move is? Or is it incongruent with your behavior? And does it feel like something's happening? And why is that? You ask yourself, why is it you don't like it? You know, that will give you a deeper understanding of how you want to construct your magic in the future.
I could not have put that better. The why is so powerful. There's so much you can learn from that, because like you've said there, it's one thing to do what I say and just say, okay, I like doing this, I don't like doing this, but why don't you like it? And you've already said it gives you an opportunity to really understand yourself, and gives you a framework to build off on, and it might open up a new door in where you can go and shoot in another direction.
Exactly. Yeah, perfect.
Well, to bring again, to be the little the psychology nerd in the corner of the room, is something that Stephen Kotler, a fantastic author, and he's just a genius. Go and look at his work if you're interested. But something that he always says in the context of peak performance is that personality doesn't scale, biology does. And I think there are so many overlaps between that phrase in magic. Personality doesn't scale. And it goes back to what we were saying earlier about that subjective nature of things. Magic really is subjective. Not everyone is going to feel it in the same way. However, in this case, biology will scale, but the tricks can still scale. Like, we can still do the different tricks in different ways and play with the same methods in different ways. But just being able to watch and understand and experience it differently, I think that's the beauty of magic, and that's all part of the game. Gotta love it.
Yeah, fantastic, Aidan. Well put.
And I think what I really want to just point out here, Christian, is that we've covered an awful lot. I know ahead of this conversation, we basically just said, hey, let's just start having a chat about creativity. And it's kind of gone on a ton of different tangents and different ways of thinking. So there's a lot actually that we've spoken about and covered. But people will have probably resonated with this. I mean, I know I have, and I know a lot of people will also do that. So where can people find you, support you, and the work that you're doing? What's the future of Christian, and how can we help?
Oh, amazing. So I am continuing to create lots of props and concepts. I've got a few lined up with Vanishing Inc. So if you go on there, there's a couple of products that I put out. LevelOne and Pluck already exists on the platform, and I've got 2 future products hopefully launching this year. For me, it's Instagram, so Christian Grace Magic. You can find me there. I have a mailing list that you can get to via my Instagram. Hopefully soon I'll be dropping some news about a membership that I'd like to run. It's a magic membership, basically. That's all I'll say for now. So if you guys are interested in card magic particularly, I'm going to start that very soon. So yeah, if anyone's interested, just go to my Instagram, sign up on my mailing list. It's a Gumroad link in my bio, and that's where you'll hear the first news of this said thing. So yeah, thank you. That would be great.
I just want to say, on behalf of myself, Aidan, and everyone listening to this, thank you so much for being open. And what I really, really appreciated, Christian, was the honest and true answers you gave. That is what I resonate with. And it goes back to what I said at the start. Your beautiful, kind and caring soul that always shares what's on your mind, and you're always so open. And I think that is absolutely fantastic. So from the bottom of our heart, thank you for coming on the podcast. It's been absolutely phenomenal. And we've learned so much, and we've explored new routes in which we didn't think that we'd actually be able to get in this podcast. So thank you so much, Christian.
Oh, well, thank you both for having me, and for your kind words. Both of you are gorgeous, and continue to do what you're doing. It's amazing. And thank you again for having me on. So pleasure's all mine.